Hi, everybody. I'm Harshini Bosireddy, and I'm joined here by my wonderful baby pets, Toffee, who is right here, my dog, and Milo, who is in my lap, curled up into a donut. And I did not plan for it. I started setting up place to sit and record. And my babies decided to join me today. And I'm grateful for that because this piece needs a little bit of joy and comfort in between. So here we have it. I've been thinking about what you all know so far if you followed my work and recordings, etc. And I realized there are glimpses and bits of my lived reality, but I've never really like talked to you all about it. You know? So I wanted to do a piece where I talk about what my lived reality is like. Not a day in the life of, just what it's like to live in my body and what I'm dealing with every day. And just to give a heads up, I will be talking about some difficult things. I will not be talking about them in graphic detail or anything like that, just my medical reality and yeah, what makes my life it is as it is right now. All right. And by the way, I shaved my head. It was an accident. Genuinely, um, you'll know more about like my sensory needs later on, but I, long story short, to give a small summary, I guess, is I live with very high resolution sensory processing, which means that like when my hair touches me, I feel every strand like picking in, and it's too much capacity load. And that's the reason why I had cut it short before. I never had short hair, not even less than my ear's length. And a couple of months ago, I used a trimmer to buzz my hair. And I was like, that is so amazing. It's so short and so free. But the thing is, my hair grows fast. So I had this hair come up and then it started poking my ears and neck again. And I just was like, this is too much. So anyway, it was 11 p.m. one night and I had prepared for like, going into the shower and kind of razoring off like I usually do, but I forgot the trimmer bit. And I was like, I went inside and I did like, okay, couple of rows, couple of lines, right? And once I finished just that, and I was like, something feels different. And I don't use a mirror because I'm just like going all over, right? Anyway, something felt odd. So I was like, what is this? What changed? So I came outside, looked in the mirror, and I was like, oh, well, gotta do the whole head now. And I remember how freeing that was. And when I walked out, I just felt so genuinely like more capacity than I had before. And I just was like, wow, it truly was like a constant channel of input, which was my hair touching my skin and, neck and ears. Just that change made such a big deal for me. And yeah, so here I am. And I think this is my new look. And it's going to stay for a while because, oh my goodness, I love it. Like, I genuinely feel free. And 2 years ago, probably, if I had done that mistake and came and looked outside in the mirror, I would have just been like, what am I gonna do? And cry. But this time I came outside and not a moment of pause before I said, well, I gotta do the whole head now. And I just finished the whole thing, came outside, looked at myself, and I was like, I am pretty. And that was a moment that made me realize, like, I am truly being me, no distortions, no, like, what am I gonna look like? What am I this? What am I that? Because I genuinely felt pretty and it was radiating in on my face how much relief I felt. And I just was like, wow. And that is pretty to me. So, yay. All right. So, tangent meeting back. Okay. So, my lived reality. And the most wonderful thing that I want to start with is that I'm still here, and grateful to be here. I'm grateful to be sharing my story, grateful to be able to share my story. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And okay, so a little about what happened since last year. And, the biggest shift of my life was 2025, February, end of February was when I started feeling very poorly. And mid of March 2025, I woke up one day, tried to get out of bed, collapsed, couldn't move, couldn't pull myself up, and I laid there on the floor 4 hours trying to get myself up because I was pretty sure I was going to get myself up. And then I called for help, and since then, a lot has changed. And I learned a lot about what was going on underneath because I've been trying to understand because I've started like feeling more and more like tired, fatigued, etc., for years, uh, progressively getting more. And when I try to get, you know, see doctors and, try to convince them and advocate for myself, showing that I was not doing well because I functioned enough. No one really paid attention until I no longer could move. So, what changed? Like, what is this whole thing? It is the primary is nervous system dysfunction. What that is my nervous system had reached a point where it could no longer function the way it could or way it was before. And so it just shut down a lot of things that it needed to. And one of the things that didn't shut down is my breathing, my heartbeat, and things like that. And they are very dysregulated um, um, because of the nervous system dysfunction. So, one of the things that happens is when I move, when I walk, when I do any sort of activity, my heart rate can go up to very high numbers and I can pass out or end up in a coma if I push myself too much. And it can be life threatening because my heart rate and like my body, my nervous system is working on its tuning. You know what I mean? Um, so when I move, I remember for example, in March when I was admitted to the hospital, anytime they would try to do PT with me, I would pass out. So they did a measurement while I was trying to walk, and I think I walked like 5 steps, 10 steps, and my heart rate went up to 170, um, which is like very high activity, and my eyes got blurry and breath got shallow and I collapsed. And everybody just were really terrified. I was too. Um, but in that moment, I really didn't um, know of anything other than like what I was experiencing, which was blurry and difficulty. And and from there to now, it's a very big change on how I'm working with my body and how I'm respecting my limits, etc. But why did this start and when did it start is a very interesting story. So it actually starts before I was even born. So it's interesting because I've heard this story so many times as I was a child. And even as an adult, my mom would tell me so many times, so proudly, that, you were such an active child. You woke up, you had opened your eyes and were looking at every sound there was, even tiny sounds. And I was like, huh. And I always was like, not many babies open their eyes that early and like look at everything. And then until last, like maybe late 2024, I never even thought about it. That I was like, I hear everything. Like I genuinely do. It is horrifying experience. But anyway, like as I try to connect the pieces is when and talk to so many specialists and everything, we now know that I was born significantly sensory sensitive to light, to sound, to smells, to textures, to everything. So to me, I hear things that most people can't even register. So even when I have my everything closed, quiet neighborhood in a small area with every door, window, everything closed, I can still hear like if somebody's playing football outside, I can hear the taps of their feet as they're running and hitting the ball. I can hear someone walking their dog in the collar of the dog kind of jingling. I never knew it was something different. And that is when I remember those stories about, you know, this person, this baby, just a couple of hours after she was born, she kept looking everywhere to every sound. And I was like, that's because to her, they were freaking loud. Like it was like, why is everything loud? Is probably what that baby was thinking, you know? To her body, probably was like, everything is too much, because it was. And and the same thing with visual input. I It's like I can see something like 10 times more, like I'm giving as an estimate of like the detail I see, right? So when I see something, for example, a leather chair from 10 feet away, I can still see the grooves in the leather and the pull and tension points and all of that from 10 feet away. And that is incredibly high resolution. And apparently, not many people experience that. And that is, again, a lot of input. And the same with texture. To me, I it's a lot. When someone touches me, I can feel their fingerprints on my skin. Anybody taps on my shoulder, I can feel their fingerprints. Anybody gives me shakes my hand, I can feel their like whole texture of the palm, right? So my skin and touch is incredibly high resolution as well. And that has been the case since I was so child, like very young child. As far as I can remember, that was my existence. Anyway, um, that is the sensory aspect I was born with. And what's interesting is that with all of that sensory senses, like significantly sensory sensitivities and high resolution processing, I was a child who was growing up, like who was living in a very loud and incredibly overwhelming environment as a baseline, right? Like maybe first 7 years of my life, first 7, 8 years of my life were in a basement of a slum-like community. That was always loud. People were screaming, yelling, hitting each other, crying, like a lot of sounds, a lot of horrific things, and people would hit me, and I was abused significantly. And so, with all of that constantly being inside my body as a child who never was asked, why are you sad? Why is this too much for you? I was just labeled as too much. And that when you label something, you no longer look at it with care and nuance and curiosity. And that curiosity died way too young for me. for people in me. Like I, no one was curious about my experience. I was labeled too much, and that was the end of it. And unfortunately, what followed afterwards is the whole life of, and also one thing that um, I have felt it for as far as I can remember as well, is something called introception. And most people feel that to some extent or another. We all have it. And what seems to be incredibly interesting, and I guess rare, in my circumstances, is that in my situation and body, is that I can feel, not actually, it's not feeling, it's a sense, right? I can sense and map and understand the internal states of my body with incredible precision. So the same high resolution processing that applies towards all the external senses also apply toward internal sensing, which means I can feel blood pumping through my veins. I can feel like when I swallow something, it actually moving through or struggling and getting stuck, or when I'm breathing, my lungs expanding, and also my how my organs sit with each other, where there is like resistance or tension, or have been able to feel that high resolution since I was a child. And I thought everybody can and do. And um and when somebody, think about, if you imagine a child, right? S- Someone who has someone who is just trying to explore the world around them, and everything is too much for them. Like everything is a lot. There's constant overload and like incoming things. Our bodies do so much amazing things at dampening everything before they come to our conscious process. And in my case, before my body could even like work in structuring all of that, I was repeatedly in danger, constant physical, sexual, emotional violations that kept my body on danger mode. And as a nervous system that tried to keep me alive, my body adapted to hear more. On top of everything I already was built like, my body adapted to, okay, we need to hear more, hear all the footsteps of everybody around before they get to us. I need to feel everything. I need to hear everything. I need to see everything. I need to process everything. I need to know exactly what's happening inside me so that I know when to shut down. And it was all of these things that were brilliantly adaptive. And when it's like running a supercomputer on in a house with the house electricity limits, like you're always processing 24/7, and you're processing so much more than what the system was built to carry. And what happened in my circumstances is that I lived in that state for 30 years. And everyone, including me, have found out all the damage that staying in that state has caused when I found safety. And what I later found out now, more and more, is that I started losing senses, like sensory processing, in a lot of places in my body. For example, I stopped sweating in my limbs since the last I can remember sweating on my limbs is when I was 13, 14 years old. And then I used to sweat a lot on my palms and feet, and then stopped sweating there out of nowhere around 17, 18. And then I stopped feeling hot or cold on my limbs. Like when I would go outside, I was living in Connecticut and I had a very thin jacket and I never felt like I was cold. If as long as I covered my torso, I didn't feel hot or cold elsewhere. And I didn't know it was that my nervous system just was like, we need to shut off these buttons and these functions because this state we were living in, it required so much out of me that things that didn't need to keep me alive were being shut off. It's like I was thinking about this and actually kind of like trying to explain it to someone. And I realized like if you have limited electricity in the house, right? And you're like very limited and you still need to keep living in this house. How do you do that? You turn off all the things that are not necessary to keep the house going. And in my case, my body did that to keep me alive. It turned off sweating. It turned off sensing temperature. And in some parts of my body, it turned off pressure and touch. And the cost of what that was, I didn't know I didn't have temperature. I thought it was just like just a regular thing that, my body is just better at handling cold and height. A couple of months ago, no, actually not a couple of months ago, like mid 2025, when I wanted to go wash myself, take a shower, and I went in and turned on the shower, and I was taking the shower, felt fine, and then as I was going in, and lastly, when I was going to clean my feet, I was like, oh, what? And I turned it off. And to me, my whole body, I could not feel the temperature, but my feet were able to at the time. And what I had realized is that I did not realize I was burning and scalding myself in the shower the whole time. By the time I walked out of the shower, the skin of all my body was peeling off because I burned myself. Because I did not know I was burning myself because I could not tell the temperature on my skin. And that's horrifying. And I could not sweat. I and when summer came last year and my whole body could not sweat and it was overheating so much. It was like my surface temperature and like my body temperature was the same as like, hi baby, am I safe? They're right here. I know those are hard moments, huh? Yeah, thank you. I got you both. Hmm? I love you. They check on me. And yeah, during summer, because my body couldn't regulate temperature and I couldn't sweat, I was overheating and so much that it was like between heat stroke after another heat stroke. And it was just like I wasn't even outside. I was in a completely dark room with cold blankets and cold packs and frozen packs. And the problem with that is that I couldn't tell temperature. So when I had cold packs on me, I couldn't tell if I was freezing my body dead. I couldn't tell. And the only thing I'm really still grateful is when I go outside now, or back in the day when like I would go outside and it was fine, even when everybody was like, it's cold, and I couldn't tell until I started getting frostbite and my fingertips would get blue and start getting too much. That's when I'd be like, oh, it's cold, it's cold. And that was the way my body told me, like, hey, frostbite, it's painful. And that's when I knew I was freezing myself. And even right now, I'm still not able to sweat all over my body, and temperature thing is still, you know, difficult, etc. And but that's the life that I live in at this time, you know, sensory loss that started when I was a child. And I guess again, curiosity of what is this child going through would have made a big difference. I think that's the reason why it's so important to me too, to kind of really meet every being as they are, because our experiences matter, you know? We all live differently. And yeah, and that's the sensory piece. And then an interesting thing, and also apparently incredibly rare, is that I was born with a right-sided aortic arch, and what that means is like usually when you have your heart on the left side, right? And then you have all the everything that comes out of the heart and connects to everywhere else in your body that grow in specific directions so that nothing gets tied up anywhere else. In my case, I have a right-sided aortic arch, which means that something that's supposed to, like usually not supposed to, but like normally for most people, comes out of on the left side and goes underneath, comes on the right side. And as you all know, right here is a lot of things happening. It's like the major junction of everything. So, what that does is to my body is that my swallowing is affected because of that. And it explains so much why I had such difficulty swallowing when I was a child, since I was a child. And there's a lot of food related trauma and torture that I was subjected to. Hi, baby. Yeah, thank you. Torture I was subjected to because I couldn't swallow properly. And I was again named as a child who was too much and that I was difficult and I was sorry, I'm moving a lot. Just Milo moved and I need to adjust. And I was a difficult child and very picky child, etc. And anytime there was anything related to food, I was labeled a very difficult child and a child who needed to be forced into compliance. And the thing that I wish people were curious as to like, why is this child struggling to swallow? Why is this child struggling to eat? Why does she gag so much? Because the answer was right in front of them. I could not swallow. And as I grew older, it became worse because what happening is that my esophagus, which is the food pipe that goes down, it is tangled with this aortic arch and another thing called um, right-sided aortic arch and humeral diverticulum, which is the pod, which is a small kind of like a bump kind of extension that is like a balloon that pops in and that pushes against my food pipe so I cannot swallow without a lot of effort. And unfortunately, when my nervous system got impacted even more, over time it got worse even more because your nervous system controls how your muscles move and muscles hold. And something that was already impacted and was compressed, think of it like some there was this, like think of bent hose, right? If you put pressure on a bent hose enough, it'll stay open enough for it to go through, water or whatever you put in to go pass through. But when that pressure, which is muscles holding it up, are weaker, then it just collapses. So the weaker I got, the more harder it became for me to swallow. And I'm still struggling with that. I drink, like nutritional shakes and all these amazing uh thick fluids that help me take medication or eat food so that I can swallow it past here. Everything gets stuck here for me because this is kind of where the like that knot is. So when I swallow, it goes up here and it stays here. And I remember that like since I was like 10 years old, I would tell my mom like it doesn't go past. It doesn't go past. It's hard. It's hard. It all stays up here. And again, I really wish somebody had curiosity Because can you imagine a 30-year-old woman who couldn't swallow all her life to be forced swallowed all her life? And she literally could not. Her pipe was blocked and she was forced all her life. And I was called difficult when I was actually being tortured into compliance. And when the food dries, it's harder to swallow, right? And so I used to waste a lot of food because when things got rougher, they were harder to swallow and I couldn't swallow. And I didn't understand all of this. All I knew was it was hard for me. And my body said no. And I really wish somebody heard it. Anyway, actually, not anyway. This is the way it happened. I am realizing that anytime I say anyway, it is a way of dismissing myself. And I don't want to dismiss myself because I've been dismissed enough in my life and I've finally built myself uh, a relationship with myself that deserves to be met as it is. Right, Toffee? Yeah? Are you proud of Mama? Are you? Yeah? Come here. Do you want to come here? Yeah? Yeah, stretchy, stretchy baby. Thank you, man. So that's one part. And then I live with severe endometriosis, which is an inflammatory condition that happens. Its primary area of impact is the uterus and area around it. And when you have severe endometriosis, what endometriosis is growth of uterine lining like cells, tissue outside of the uterus. So every period, um, every, you know, female who was, born with, female reproductive system, when they have a period, they shed that lining and it has a place to go, right? Because uterus has an opening and it comes out. That's the period. In the case of endometriosis, because it grows outside of the uterus, and when the rupture happens, which is supposed to shed that lining, there is no place for the tissue to go. So it piles and it sheds. And then, because there is so much bloody thing inside, it causes inflammation. And then next cycle comes and it grows more. And then the tissue needs to heal from inflammation. So it grows a tissue of scar tissue. And then another cycle comes, the same process. It has nowhere to go, forms inflammatory sites, and then scar tissue. Over time, what happens is there's so much scar tissue that the organs around the uterus start getting attached. It's like glue, right? And so every time there is closer to period time, anytime there is uterine contractions, the uterus is trying to pull, but every other organ around it is stuck to this piece that is trying to move. so everything around it moves. And that to me is my, like, including my, like, intestines and everything around it just gets pulled. And it is significantly painful. I have never, I told so many people I have significant period pain. I pass out. I've passed out in bathrooms so many times before. Like this was in like 2018, 2017. I used to have so much pain I couldn't move out of bed. And I remember being told every person goes through it. Get out. Stop being lazy. And again, we just label it as she's just being difficult or lazy. We are never curious about why is it so painful for you. And in my case, it was so painful for me because I was struggling with severe endometriosis that went undiagnosed for a very long time. And now I have organs that are stuck together and get pulled every time, and significantly heavier bleeding, etc. And still, even to this day, when I am close to my periods, I need a whole stack of pain meds and everything. And there are a couple of options for it to address it long term, but none of them are like less risk on my body, given my nervous system and the fragility of my life. So there's that. Okay, that was already a lot, right? Can you tell it's a lot? Because I can. I'm laughing because until I start saying them, I don't realize how much I live inside. And because that's my every moment of every day, like I have my cart next to me, which has EpiPens because I've almost died like 4 times because of anaphylactic reactions. Because my nervous system processes certain things very differently. Like my body metabolizes certain things very differently. And my nervous system processes certain chemicals, like pathways are different in how it processes them. So that's a very big, difficult thing. And nobody paid attention, actually, even in medical stuff, until I actually started having severe, like, anaphylactic reactions where throat started closing up, couldn't talk, and I have these EpiPens that I have used on myself to save my life multiple times and called 911 right after because you're required to call for 911 when you use an EpiPen on yourself. Because EpiPen is like an adrenaline that you give yourself for temporary relief, right? So it's like you're giving your body a significant adrenaline rush so that you don't, like, it opens up everything to keep you alive long enough for help to come. And sometimes that adrenaline rush is enough. Sometimes you need more support. So when, I don't know if all of you know what anaphylaxis is. Anaphylaxis is an allergic reaction. Um, and basically, when you have allergy like reaction to something, you might be, it ranges, right? It's thank you, baby. Go. Thank you. You might have, you might be sneezing, you might be um like watery eyes, or have like stomach upset, etc. They're all allergic reactions, and it's on a spectrum, right? Mild, moderate, severe, and then life threatening. And life threatening is when your throat closes up and like you no longer are able to breathe, and your muscles start get tightened so much that if you don't take action very fast, it can be life threatening. Therefore, I have EpiPens, and it's terrifying when you need to use them. And I'm grateful. My body was just like, EpiPen now, and I was like, okay, yes. And I'm really grateful EpiPens exist. Really, I could have died so many times, and I didn't because EpiPens exist. Um, and then in my cart, I also have, an rescue inhaler, which is also when breathing is difficult. And then I have swallowing help. I also have pain stuff. I also have, headphones and earbuds and all the things that I would need to, reduce sensory overwhelm on myself. And yeah, oh yeah, and a lot of, what are these things? But like, basically in everything I would need to keep myself alive is always in this card and right next to me at all times. I take it across the upstairs, so that if anything happens, I have it right within my reach. And so, yeah, like I said, to most people, it is, they don't think about life and death. It is my baseline, like, and I've been so close to death so many times that, like, I've seen it way too many times. And to me, I live in such intense and very fragile state all the time. Every day, every moment of my life is significantly fragile, and it can go away like that. And somehow I'm still here, and I'm grateful that I'm still here. I'm grateful that I'm able to pet this baby right here, sitting next to me and curled up. I'm also grateful that I'm here with my body, which has worked so hard to keep me alive. Like, done so many incredible adaptations it needed to do to keep me alive. Right, Taffy? Yeah. And the most amazing thing to me is that genuinely, my life is incredibly fragile. At the same time, my lived reality is incredibly chaotic and incredibly unsupported at this time. And at the same time, I am building a life of safety and sustainability, not just for myself, but beings around me, just like this girl and Milo and beings on beings alive, including you, including me, including everybody. Because I realized, again, when we label something and move on, curiosity dies. And when curiosity dies, so much gets missed. You don't notice things that are very crucial in saving someone's life. And in my life, curiosity died very young before my body started screaming for help since I was very young. And it never got picked up. It never got heard. And now I hear myself. I hear my body. I respect my body. I respect my needs. I honor my needs. Not because they're special or different or anything, but because they are mine and they are lived essentials to keep myself being myself. And I'm proud of me. I genuinely am. And the reason I wanted to share this is because I think first is also, by the way, I only shared like half of what I live with every day. I just didn't want to make this video too long at the same time. And also, I'm getting kind of tired. So, so I'm going to end it here. But other reason is I want you all to know that life can be incredibly difficult. Actually, my life is fine. I know I keep saying that. It's like my circumstances and my lived reality are incredibly difficult. But my life, the life of where I live with myself and listen to myself and my babies and care for the beings that matter to me, that's my life. And I love that. And I'm building a life of safety and sustainability, not just for myself, but for beings around me and hopefully beings in the world. And I'm proud of that, and I hope it gives you a sense of first awareness that these things happen, these things are experienced, and you don't know what other person is experiencing. And please pause to be curious, not to understand into framing that works for you, but pause to and be curious about their experience, not your understanding of their experience, because they're very different things. When I say I hear everything, your understanding of that I hear everything might be I hear everything like everything is based on what you understand. It can be, but that's only limited by your framework, your knowledge, not what they experience is. And when we start looking at life a little differently, looking at conversations and each other a little differently, and be curious to learn about each other and, be with each other instead of trying to figure somebody out and trying to force understanding into something that should actually be learned, not understood. I hope you understand. Like, I hope you notice the difference between what I mean by learning. Learning is learning a new architecture, learning new framework of existing, and understanding is forcing your, like, not forcing, because understanding is very important some in a lot of places, and understanding is molding the experience of or what you're noticing or perceiving into your pre-existing framework, and they're very different things. And that's what I mean is, and also, just so you all know, I appreciate you. I don't know who watches these. I don't know if it meets anybody as they are. And I hope you know that if it changes even 3% of how you see yourself or the life around you or relationships or the world we live in, that's all, that's all I could ask for, because that's the beauty of my life is I live at at the cliff between life and death every day. And that from there, I see and have seen so many amazing things that I hope not anybody have to live it to see. At the same time, I've seen it from a different perspective. And and I see it from a different perspective. And I hope no one has to be at the cliff between life and death to have this perspective or see things the way they truly are. And so here I am sharing, and not to inspire, not to, like inspiration is great, don't get me wrong. And motivation is great, don't get me wrong about those things. It's just that I'd rather see you seeing yourself, you know, because you're right. Like, if you're thinking about, oh my God, this person has lived through so much and lives through so much, and still here she is talking about it. Wow, amazing. I agree. I'm not boasting myself, it's just the truth. And so it can be motivational. Great, I can do anything. Yes, you can. You absolutely can. And here's also something. Should you do everything you can? Because maybe, just maybe, you deserve to pause and rest and then rise. Because we all talk about rise and shine. And I want to say rest and rise. It's a much better rhythm that way. Thank you, everybody.